Hola, un gran saludo de bienvenida y gracias por...
Hi, welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us for this session. I'm Ana Catarina Suarez Peña, and the Regional Director for Latin America of the GFN, and I'm very happy to have over 100 participants from 16 countries that are here with us today. We hope that programs such as this support the incredible work that all of you do in your countries. So, to begin with today's program, it's an honor for me to present to you Beatriz Leal. She's Vice President for People and Culture. She is the Manager for Countries for Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. And Beatriz, she is from Venezuela originally. She has over 15 years of experience in Latin America, developing and implementing corporate strategies that affect better results for business by positioning the brand. She has a lot of experience in corporate communications, and she has developed and implemented very successful strategies for increasing reliability and trust, both internally and externally. She is a specialized advisor. She does human communication, strategic communication, government, corporate relationships, and she was recognized as one of the 100 most influential people in marketing in Mexico by the magazine Mexico 2.0 in 2017 and 2018. So we're going to have a session with Beatriz. Beatriz is going to be talking to you, presenting, and this is something that has to do with the organizational culture that really impacts our countries. And it's something that has been changing due to this new situation. I love that she says this is not a new normal, but a new reality. Then after her, we're going to have a period for questions and answers. So I invite you to use the chat box, and she will be replying to your questions. She will be doing that throughout the conference, but we're also going to have a Q&A period at the end. The presentation that Beatrice is doing this morning, it's in Spanish right now. It will be in English by tomorrow. You can download it on the screen. You're going to see a link to download it. And for those of you listening to us, for those of you that just speak English, on the lower uh, portion of your screen, you have a globe for interpretation. You can choose English as your language. And Beatriz, hi. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. To me, there's nothing more important, and that's my own personal goal, professionally and personally. I want to support organizations, those that are changing the world, making a better world for everybody. So it's a big honor to be here, Ana Catalina. Big honor to be part, on behalf of my organization. I want to share a little piece of everything that we've been doing and what we've been doing for these 10 months that are like the most complex months that we've had in ages. We have our team of interpreters that are available. They're ready to interpret. I'm from Venezuela with Mexican accent, but I'm Latina. So we're going to go ahead and have a conversation. That's why I loved Ana Catalina, that we started with this concept that we are going to have a conversation. This is a chat. And that is why we have a chat box for Q&A, for comments. You can go there, you can share questions, concerns, you can have different points of view. And we want to co create something with you, something that works for you, because the transcendence of what you're doing as an organization has such a huge impact for millions of people around the world. And that is no small feast. So, um, that we are here in this virtual space, and we want to talk to you about the role that you play as part of your organization and what you do in the world, but also what you do internally as part of your organization. What you do is so impressive, and I want to congratulate you. So without any further delay, we're going to go ahead and get started. The technology team has been helping us a lot so that we can make sure that everything works and everything works well. So we're going to start with this. When the new reality, and we're talking about today, the world today, and we cannot pretend that we're out of the crisis yet. We had this big surprise. We had a crisis when we had to relearn how to live personally, with our families, professionally, as organizations. We have to live in a much more complex reality, and we have to fight against an enemy that I cannot really sit at the table to negotiate with this enemy. And it didn't discriminate. Didn't discriminate against any social position, gender, age. We are living through a huge health crisis, and without any doubts, that led organizations, regardless of whether they're private, public, mixed, from any country in the world, and they had to redefine their organizational culture. So let's start uh, at the beginning. What happened to what, 10, 11 months ago? These were the headlines of the main newspapers. They were talking about Donald Trump's impeachment. They were talking about, problems in Latin America. We always have those. There were a number of headlines back then globally. And somewhere around there, we heard that something was happening in Asia, something was happening in China. We read about a virus and we said, oh, well, Chinese, who knows what they're eating over there. And what happened was, here it is. We all got it. And when it arrived, when it started in Europe, that's when we said, okay, it's true. And then what happened is, then we saw, the announcements, the number of cases, the people who got sick, and then it jumped to Latin America. And then we had to face a reality of millions and millions of people infected. So, what happened? And we're saying that this is a crisis. So crises have, you have some theories that are great, and it shows us how we react during this situation. So what is the most impactful thing during a situation like this? It's a scenario where we're not only scared, we were really scared in March and April, but still today we still feel our fear. And this requires from us a lot of attention, especially when we're talking about what happens inside the organizations. Why? Because we're facing a public health crisis. And what I said at the beginning, we are facing this new reality that affected all of us, regardless of our gender, our beliefs, our preferences, what we eat. It didn't respect anybody. It's the worst health crisis in the world in the last 100 years. No doubt that led to a global crisis. And we talked about the fact that it impacted the markets in different countries. And we can see from the macro level, it went all the way to the micro level, and we see that it affected then the local stock markets, the local economies, the results of the different organizations. And when we're talking about business, we're talking about companies. Obviously, the companies' profits were affected as well. So, and then we go to the smallest units, the families. Obviously, it affected families because we lost 47 million jobs. And we are like 10 months into the crisis and we still have a long way to go. So, what happens when you realize what the economic impact is there in your country, the impact in your organization, in your family? As human beings, we react, and we react with the most incredible feeling, emotion that we can have, and that's fear. And fear can paralyze you. Fear can make you move forward because you have to really get out of the situation that you're in. So that is something that we're talking about. We've been talking about it. We've been chatting with different specialists and people that work in mental health. And what they're saying is that the latest wave, COVID wave, beyond the fact, it doesn't have to do with the vaccine or anything, but it has really affected people, their mental health, because it has provoked total anxiety. We are seeing a lot of depression. We are seeing people that are afraid to leave their homes. We are showing fear of our other human beings when we're walking down the street. And I don't know if that happens to you that are listening to us. We are out of the house. If we see somebody walking down the street on our side of the road, we just cross the road. And if we see a lot of people, and if I see somebody that has their mask and is not covering their mouth, I immediately cross the street to the other side. So we are living in fear. And these situations of fear And this, they are fed by what we call uncertainty. And human beings love having control. They love having power over what's going on around them. So let's imagine that we all have like a mathematical formula for our lives. We have one variable that had to do with things that were not related to work. We had, financial planning in our lives. We had vacation planning for the year, and that's how our formula was made. And all of us had that. And we had, if we remember, January, February, we had our own personal variables that were out of our control. Those things that give you a little bit of anxiety. But there were so many variables that were in our control that those variables that we can control were not those so big. What happened was everything moved around. There was a huge atomic movement. There was like a revolution, or formula changed completely. So now we have a lot of variables that we cannot control anymore. So that leads to a new frame of uncertainty. We're not sure of anything. Nothing is for sure. So those factors that you have this fear of getting sick, you have this fear of losing your loved ones, you have this fear of what could happen financially to you, and on top of that, we don't know what's going to happen. So to that we have to add, as if this was not enough, we have the quarantine. Quarantines that became quarantines of 100 days, 150 days, and you have this doubt. How does this impact you? Because organizations such as yours, you become even more important during this type of crisis. So not only we add all these other variables to what's going on, but you also have the quarantine. And on top of that, can you imagine, especially those of us who are Latino, and I know that here we have people from other continents and other places, but for Latinos, we need to feel that we're loved. We need to feel close to our family. So this isolation, this social isolation, the distance from my loved ones, the fact that I cannot visit them on the weekends, that I cannot see our parents, that we cannot get together with your family, that is another factor that adds instability, emotional instability to our picture. And then we can add people that we know that have gotten sick. We know relatives of our colleagues that have gotten sick, and we know people that have lost their lives, and we can keep adding things to this picture. So if we look at the total scenario, those things that scared us in March or April is not over. We're still very scared because of what's going on. And why? This is the theory of a crisis. How does a crisis work? And this is for you to have some context of where, as leaders, we can go into this process and help. Crises happen, and this is very simple. They start with one or more issues. They start with latent risks that can be activated at any point. Those risks, if you don't take care of them, if you do not solve them, if you cannot control the impact they have, this this is what we call a contingency. This is a contingency that starts affecting our normal operations mildly in the beginning. Then, when we go into a full crisis, our operations are really affected by what's going on. Everything that goes up eventually comes down. Thank you. Thank God for that. So, after you get to the peak of the crisis, and you can stay there for a while, and that is where we are right now, then it starts going down and down. And this is a lesson on how to start controlling the impact the crisis has had on our organization. How do I start learning about what's happened? And the final point is when we do an assessment, and some people call it a postmortem. You analyze what happened, how I reacted, what decisions I made, what worked, what did not work, so that later on I can avoid the negative responses from the organization. This is something really complex, and these are just a few steps. But if you see this curve, this curve goes up and then goes down. And during those ups and downs, we feel things, we feel emotions. And I would love to hear, in a way, to add you to this conversation, and I would like to hear your opinion. So I would like to take your pulse and on your emotions, what you're feeling right now, so understand from you how you felt, how did you feel some of these feelings or emotions during the crisis for you? What, which one out of these are the feelings that you've had throughout this last 10 months of crisis? Have you felt joy, fear, rage, sadness, hope, or none of the above?
I invite you to vote now so that you can share your opinions and we can work on that. Um, if you are okay, Ana Catalina, I'm gonna give you have 30 seconds to share your opinions. Which one of those emotions on the list have you felt? Have you lived? Regardless of the moment, it could be at the peak or at one of the lower points, but let's try to take the pulse, see your opinions. I would love to see the answers that we have so far, if production can help me, so that we can understand it better. And there are some theories that talk about the bipolarity of emotions. You see, 62% has felt or has lived through fear, sadness, 60%. But I love seeing 47% hope. I love those results. Why? Because, in fact, that's what has happened with this crisis. When it started, and let's go back to the month of January, when we were seeing what was happening in China, there were some expectations about what was happening. As human beings, we related to the feelings of those people who were losing relatives literally, and for a reason that nobody really understood well. No, it wasn't clear whether it had been a bat or a mouse or a rat. So from expectations, then when we entered into that contingency situation, we saw it happening in Europe, and we started feeling, yes, it's this is true. It's happening, and it's closer to us now. So the curve came down a little bit, then started going up again, and now this is real. And we get to the higher peaks of fear. I'm anxious, I'm fearful, I'm not living anymore. And we go through different emotions. The reality is that we cannot talk about bipolar emotions, bipolarity. We're talking about multipolarity because one day we can have that fear of catching the virus, the fear of losing the battle to the virus, but at the same time, we can feel happy, hopeful, joyful when we see how some organizations are helping other people overcome this crisis. For example, when you uh, fulfill that important purpose that you have as an organization, taking food to those who most need it. Those are moments of joy, moments when we see that we can become more human, and then all of a sudden we can feel panic because we see an ambulance taking away a neighbor, and we're thinking, well, he might have COVID. So what's happening with our emotions, that anxiety, that sadness that you are living through, your teams are living through that too. And that's where the role of the leader becomes so important. And it takes us to a future, and the future is today, even though it sounds like a cliche, it sounds like a consulting firm campaign. Well, future is today. Why? Because we have learned that we have to live day by day, and from the standpoint of the organization, we have to be readjusting our objectives, our strategies, so that we can respond to a reality where we cannot control most of the variables. This new scenario requires, and then let's go to the organizational role. We requires a reinvention of our culture, and this is happening in a natural fashion. Why? Because many organizations have already made the decision to move to remote work. Other organizations are working on different schemes. partial work from the office, partially from the home. So we have maybe the operational part on the streets, on the road, and the organization administrative at home. And some organizations are partially working maybe 3 days a week instead of five, or those 3 days maybe we can work a little bit from home, a little bit at the office. And that's taking this is for everybody, not just you as leaders, but every organization needs to have a new set of skills, organizational skills. We were talking about soft skills. Well, now we need to restructure those skills and see what we can expect from each one of the people in our organization. And undoubtedly, we need to start from the leaders. And there is a theory from Asia that says that the crisis is the best possible time to market your organizational values, to sell your organizational values. Why? Because during difficult times, that's when we see the mettle of our people. That's when we see the core of our organization, where the purpose of our organization becomes even more important, the mission, the values of our organization. So the crisis, and this crisis in particular, is a great opportunity to consolidate that management philosophy of our organization. And undoubtedly, what you see there, when we went from what's nice to have and now has become a must. And I'm going to focus on technology because technology has become something that is indispensable so that we can maintain the our organization's operational, regardless of whether it's an NGO, a public organization, a private organization. It has become a must so that we can ensure that our organization remains operational. I don't know if there are any questions so far. Checking to see if something comes up, uh, so that this can become more of a conversation. Um, and if not, no questions, we can go on to the next step here. Let's talk about commitment or engagement. Uh, they asked and I said yes. So, uh, engagement is something that's very important in any human relationship, because that engagement or that commitment uh, generates trust. And trust is the best insurance policy for the organization. To the extent that people trust the organization, to the extent that people trust their coworkers, but mostly they trust their leader. That's how we will be able, at the worst of times, to have our people be there to accompany this strategy to make the organizational purpose a reality. Uh, I have worked with groups, and I really believe in the importance of trust. And trust grows through that engagement. Engagement has three features, and I would also like to understand from your perspective how this concept of engagement or commitment works. So I would like to listen to you if we can activate that second survey. For example, those of you who are married, who are in a relationship, what are the main reasons why you maintain that commitment, that engagement? First, because it has to be maintained. I mean, we're married, we signed that marriage certificate, so we have to stay because we signed the document. The second reason is because you have to and you need to. So, those of us who are married, okay, we sign a document and also we have a mortgage to pay. Or, third reason, because you desire to stay in that relationship. So, let's give everybody 30 seconds to see why you stay engaged, because you have to and need to, or because you need it, but you want to remain. Let's think about the relation with your partner, with your spouse, with the organization. Why? remain in that commitment. Everybody take a, yeah, okay, take a picture of the screen and show it to your partner. So, you can show them that you love being in that relationship. So I love seeing that, in fact, we're talking about, somehow we're talking about the three levels of commitment. And let's go to the first one, organizational. We're talking about the organizational commitment, the organizational engagement. That's the regulatory commitment. Why? Because, well, I signed the contract, I have loyalty to the organization, but that's it. Second level of commitment is what we call the continuity commitment. I need to stay. Why? Because at this organization, I have a chance to use my skills when I get compensated and I can fulfill my family commitments because I'm learning and I'm growing and there's a possibility to grow outside the organization. And then let's move to the third level of engagement, which is the most significant. And let's think about what marriage means. I signed a document and so I have to remain in this organization. I have a mortgage, so yeah, we need the other to help with that. And then we've reached the third level of commitment, which is the emotional, affective. I want to remain intellectually, spiritually, from my soul. I want to remain with the organization. Why? Because it's an organization that challenges. And let's think about the new generations. They're challenging me to become the best version of myself, both professionally and personally, because there's a clarity of where we're going and what we are today. There is a wonderful concept, which is transcendency. How do I transcend my role as a collaborator, as a working person? How does that transcend into being something more than a job? This is something that occurs regardless of your beliefs, your nationality, your ethnic background, whether you're a vegan or not. I am treated as a human being, respected as human beings, and we all have the same opportunities. And this is the ideal situation for leaders, committed leaders who are seeking to have each and every one of the members of the team to want to remain, to continue. Um, we want the people in the organization to wear the shirt of the organization. There was an article in Forbes a couple of years that said, I don't want people to wear the shirt because maybe I'll gain a few pounds and it won't fit, or maybe I wash it so often that it's the colors have faded. But no, I want the people to have that organization in their veins. They have to live, they have to feel the organization. That's our uh, desire as the leader. We want our people to want to remain, to continue with the organization. So, how do I do that? How do I adjust? How do I transform my organization's culture? How do I transform the culture of my work team so that our people want to stay? And that's what we call culture 4.0. People are talking about culture 5.0 already, but um, up to maybe 3, 4 years ago, I was invited to speak at some conferences, at some places, about how this new industrial revolution, the culture 4.0 revolution, was impacting people at the most important level, the level of their people. So now this wonderful team of Go Integro has helped me to continue developing this concept. So what does that mean? Culture 4.0. When we're talking about Industrial Revolution 4.0, we're talking about the involvement of technology in many of our processes. It goes from the production lines that each day incorporate more of this state-of-the-art technology up to our administrative processes. I upload an order, and that takes care of everything: invoicing, payment. logistics, how to deliver that, and that's loaded into my context and everything. But we care too much about technology in processes and we forget about our people. So, what do we mean with culture 4.0? Is how do we achieve a cultural change that goes hand in hand with that technological change? And that's what they referred to an article in Time magazine where they said that the number of jobs that has been lost due to more efficient machines is only part of the problem. Automation might prevent the economy from generating new jobs. Automation is beginning to establish itself and also to eliminate service and office jobs. This is a reality, but this is an article published on February 24, 1961. So we're saying that 60 years ago, people were thinking about the impact that automation and technology was going to have on people. And we're still redefining it, re engineering how to maintain an organizational culture that responds to this technological innovation process. So look at the date, 1961. And so, what do we need to work on to change our culture, to take it to that level of culture 4.0? There's four pillars. Undoubtedly, with this new reality, one of those pillars is technology. How do we leverage technology to create that commitment in people to desire, to want, to love remaining with our organizations? We have to leverage all the tools that we have today. How do we humanize it? How do we make beyond the online? How everything that we did offline, how can we do that online? How do I keep my people close and aligned with the information, leveraging that technology? Second, think about our people as consumers. There's a wonderful theory that says that people, just like consumers, their consumption trends for goods and services in the market, and marketeers, people in marketing work very hard to create, to generate that desire for connection, engagement with a brand. So we, at an organizational level, we need to do the same, but thinking that uh, our consumer, what our most important value for our consumers is trust. So how do we understand? How do we leverage that way that our work teams consume so that they consume for the benefit of the organization? So something that's very important is inclusion, and that's another pillar. And that doesn't mean being inclusive with people who have uh, disabilities or gender equality. Is not just that, it's that and more. How does the organization provide the opportunity for all their partners, their workers, regardless of course, age, race, religious beliefs, sexual preferences? How can they find in this organization a great place to work, a great place to go beyond as a person, to do something that's transcendent? And last here, but not least, the most important one, which is leadership. We need leaders who are capable of connecting with this multiplicity of audiences that we have within the organization. We need leaders who can generate that engagement at that very high level of trust from all the members of the team, not just towards the organization, but that they have to trust us as leaders. They have to trust their coworkers, their colleagues. They have to know that they can count on the support of the organization so that they can not only execute the role, the function that we have defined for them within the organization, but that they will have the opportunity to grow, to develop as professionals, technicians, workers, as people. Leaders, to give you an idea, in one of many studies that was carried out, it was shown that first of all, people are not retained. The that idea, that concept of retention ratio. So we want people to stay with the organization. That has become old-fashioned. We talk about the desire to remain, permanence. When people decide to do that, we cannot retain them. So, and there are uh, some main reasons why people want to remain with the organization. First is compensation. Second, the environmental, the climate, the work climate. The third is the leader. So compensation, the weight of compensation is about 20%. I mean, we can design the best compensation packages, both economic as emotional, and that weighs only 20% on the decision to remain. Second, that working climate, the relationships that get established within the working team. And the third is the leader, totally dependent on the leader. And I'm going to say this pretty strongly. You leaders, you have the enormous responsibility of having your working teams deciding to remain. So 50% of the decision of your teams to reach that highest level of commitment, which is I want to remain with this organization. So that's all on your shoulders. And when we work on these 4 areas, and this is not just a job for human resources, it's not a job for the highest position in the organization, it's a job for everybody. When we work on these 4 great pillars, we can say that we are going into starting the transformation towards a uh, 4.0 culture. I don't see any questions so far, so let's continue.
You can go ahead and write down your questions. We're going to try to answer them at the end of the presentation. So let's go to the first point. These are multi consumers. When we're talking about multi, we're talking about multiple generations, nationalities, cultures, everything that we want to follow to the prefix multi. So those of us over 40, proud of it, we remember the things that we have on one side of the screen. Young people don't understand how a television set would go from channel 2 to channel 12. The telephones, the biggest innovation was we went to the keypad, and then we had like a little screen that we had to do presentations with the machines or equipment this size that was like 10 kilograms in weight. And then we had to have some acetate forms that we had to write our presentations and then project them. But today's reality is, everything is online. We have thousands and thousands of networks through which we make connections among people. So how does it work? How do consumers think nowadays? Today, for the first time ever, organizations are living with 5 different generations, and we have the founders, the oldest people, those are around 80 right now, but their level of awareness, their mental clarity is surprising. People with incredible experience that we can learn from. Then we have the baby boomers, and the very well known baby boomers, those were the people that came after the war. That's the generation that was born after the wars in our planet. Then we have the Generation X, the workaholics. That's what we call them. The generation, those of us from 40 to 55 years of age. And behind us, we have the millennials, and that's badly stated. These are social generation, is a generation that have a sense of what the impact is of human beings on the planet, something that we were not aware of before. And then we have the centennials. Those are the younger people. But nowadays, those people are already in our organization. So, how do they think, and especially for you as leaders, so that you can start thinking of new ideas of how to sell or how to give them trust? And then we're going to talk about baby boomers right now. My dad is a baby boomer. He's always used the same shoe, the same model, the same brand of shoes. It's been about 20 years and he hasn't changed. And nowadays, if he needs to go to the store, he needs to go to the store to buy those shoes and he needs to buy them at this store. But then we have, he has the same shoe size and the same color, but he needs to go to the store and he needs to ask for that shoe in that same size that he's always worn, just in case. And he starts putting them on and he starts wondering, do I really need these shoes? Do I need these shoes? And then you tell them, oh, Dad, I mean, your other shoes are getting old. They're falling apart. Please throw them away. So when he decides to purchase the shoes, he feels guilty. He feels, do I deserve these shoes? Do I need them really? So this is a generation that their way of consuming is totally different from ours. Then comes my generation. If we have women in the audience, I'm sure you're going to understand what I'm talking about, the process that we follow. Now, this is February. We were at the mall. We would walk in front of the store. I'm not advertising, but let's say that we go, we go, any shoe store, and we say, I love these shoes. We go into the store. We ask the salesperson if they can bring me the model in my size and maybe have a size larger because we have to measure up how long we're going to be able to withstand the pain with those shoes. So we put on the shoes, we walk in the store side to side, and we analyze. I mean, what are the places where this is going to hurt? And gentlemen, if you're listening to us, when we wear heels, women know their feet are going to hurt, but we have to be able to gauge how much pain we're willing to take. So once we are safe, feeling that we are going to be in pain, but we're going to be able to tolerate the pain for a while. And so the next question is, what color? What colors do you have? And if they have that size in 4 colors, I'm going to buy them in all 4 colors. So, gentlemen, believe me, your closet is not that shoes appear inside the closet. We buy them. That's why we have so many pairs of shoes. Believe us, we bought 4 pairs of shoes at the same time. That is how we shop. Is that is the consumption level of our generation. Then we go to the millennial generation. They are very happy doing transactions, any kind of transactions online, e-commerce. So they buy through a web platform. They decide the model of shoes. They maybe are willing to wait for 2 weeks for the shoes to get home. And if those shoes don't fit, well, they send it back to the store and then they wait for another 4 weeks. That's from the time they send them back until they get the new pair. So if you tell that to me, a Generation X woman, I would never do that. And then we have the centennials. And what is happening with them? And it's very important for the financial sector. Centennials reactivated the model of bartering, which means I start with my process. Um, I I do like an exchange, money for a product. But then when I decide to trade it, I put it on a platform and maybe I can barter it. I can exchange that for a camera, for instance. There is a new model of transactions going on right now. As leaders, we need to understand how this process is taking place. And once we understand that, then we can devise our own strategies to be able to promote and and then we can promote our trust or trusting us in the same way. So I invite you here to talk to us about what you want to talk about. When we're talking about, trust 4.0, we're talking about this. How do we communicate nowadays? in this world 4.0? How do we and generate this culture of appreciation? How do we develop the skills of our people? How do we instill in people these feelings, and how do we train our workforce? These are different items. They're very, very extensive, and I would love to have more time to talk about it. I would love to invite you to one of the, if you can tell me which one out of all the things would you like to discuss today? Communication? Do you want to talk about appreciation 4.0, or would you like to talk about leadership 4.0? So I would like to have a survey right now so you can help me and tell me what you want to discuss: communication, appreciation, or leadership. I'm going to give you 15 seconds so that you can tell us what you want to talk about right now. Okay, we're going to close and see which topic you want to discuss. Leadership. Okay, I love it. I love it. I love it that we go in that direction. So let's talk about leadership 4.0. What does this mean? And for this, I'm going to show you some great characters, some great, television characters that we all love. It was time for you to come. We're going to be late. Oh my gosh, he's already growling. Did you have any problems last night? I never have any problems at night. My problems always start during the day. So, what are you thinking of? I'm thinking of the baby that's about to come. A baby needs a lot of things, and I need more money than what I earn. There's a very simple solution, Pedro. Yes, you can ask for a raise. Do you think that's really easy? I don't dare do that. Well, you have to trust yourself and know your worth. You deserve it, Pedro. You are an expert. You know how to do your job. You are right. As soon as I get to the mine, I'm going to ask for a raise. And yeah, look at this horrible traffic here. Let's speed up. Pedro pica piedra. Fred Flintstone's going to have a baby. You know what that means? Yes, yes. A baby is a very soft, cute thing that goes goo, goo, goo. No, no. It means that Flintstone is going to come here and ask for a raise. All our employees are about to have a baby, except for me to take care of them. We have to set an example with Fred Flintstone. There won't be a raise. But that is bad policy with the workers, Dad. We have to stop him from asking. But how? Well, what do you think? Re the sale, like let's drop the salary operation. Okay, let's say you deserve the trust that I had in you when I hired you. So you talk about, how to decrease his salary, and I'm going to tell the secretary what she needs to do. Miss, when Mr. Fred Flintstone comes over, he was going to want to talk to me, but tell him to wait outside. I understand, Daddy. No, not now. Yes, of course, Mr. Rajuela. She cannot call me Daddy. I wonder why so many girls here call me that. Okay, hey, let's wait. Everything's going to be really easy. Good luck. Hi. I would like to see Mr. Rajuela for a very private matter. No, he is with the manager. He's with somebody else asking for a raise, but you can wait in the waiting room. He's that's his own son that he's asking for a raise. I don't think he's gonna deny him a raise. No, 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 Dad, please, no, no. Get out of here. Get out of here. I'm so sorry, for having asked for a raise. Please, please, please do not fire me. I do accept for you to lower my salary. Did you say lower your salary? Yes, please, please. Just the pleasure of working for you is enough. Okay, you can go back to your job with half the salary. Half? Oh, thank you, Dad. Thank you so much. His own son? Fred Flintstone, what do you need? Well, well,
Picapiedra es un buen
Flintstone
trabajador.
is a good worker. Yes. That is our incentive plan. Yes. What is the incentive plan? To work hard or for us to fire you? That is the biggest incentive. Oh, I'm learning so much from you, Daddy. Let's see. We're talking about this cartoon. This is what, 30 years old, 35 years old, 35 years old. We were already talking, first of all, about a work scheme where these were the incentive plans. And then when I watched this cartoon, I think, oh my gosh, I think my parents were so responsible for letting me watch a cartoon where the boss is having an affair with the secretary. But hey, this is how people were managed by fear. This model, it incentivizes people through fear and the fear of being fired, basically. And, and this has been fractured by the new leaders. There are leaders nowadays, people in positions, very high level positions that are already millennials. So they have a totally different set of ideas. Just like they buy differently, just imagine them as leaders today. So the question is, how can I be a 4.0 leader? And Generation X people talk about that. If my bosses were baby boomers, which is a post-war generation where the rules and the structure, the time you got in the morning, the time you left, it was so important. So how do we become leaders in this new generation? The 4.0 leader has these traits. So first of all is a leader that recognizes or appreciates its employees. It doesn't mean that you're a good person or a bad person. No. 4.0 leaders have to appreciate attitudes, behaviors, and ways of acting that are aligned to the management philosophy of the organization, which means the contributions of this worker, the contributions of this person to achieve our objectives, um, by living in a way that aligns to our values and what we're doing. That is what I want to show appreciation for. So, how are changes happening right now? You have to appreciate 48 hours, maximum 72 hours after the behavior we want to reinforce happens, because we want to make sure they know that that is the behavior, that is the attitude that we want to see. Leaders communicate, they communicate all the time. And not only when I need to ask you, I communicate with you when I want to communicate with you things that we have achieved, when I want to share opportunities for improvement, when I want to keep you connected to what we're doing, where we're going, and the role you play as working with us. This is the leader that inspires, not through fear, like the incentive plan for the Flintstones. No, the 4.0 leader inspires people to become their best version as a person and as a professional. Inspire them to transcend from their uh, work post. They We want to inspire them to be a factor for change. The leader remembers how they learned to, for instance, ride a bike. You would get on the bike and you would fall off. And you would get, bruised, and you kept, trying until you learned. So you want to empower people. Leaders develop, and I would imagine that it has to do with our own sense of, becoming parents. We are like parents. We know where I can go, how far can I go, how many risks I can take of this child falling off the bike without really getting hurt. So, but you have to get up after you fall. And that is what we do with our people. We give them the opportunity to assume and to be leaders of their own processes, and as part of what we're developing in our company, and we trust them that, and we also know that they're going to fall and they're going to have opportunities for learning. And one of my mentors once told me, and he always told me he was going to let me fall, but he was always going to make sure that he was gonna hold me, he was gonna hold my head so that I wouldn't break my neck, but he knew that I was gonna fall, and he was very confident that I was gonna learn from my faults. Uh, on top of empowering, you wanna ensure alignment. The only way that our team, our people, our bases on which we build our objectives, those need to be aligned. Aligned means we have all of us have to understand where the organization is going. We have to understand where your area is going to. You have to have them understand the role they play as a person to achieve the goals and the objectives and where we need to make improvements. The leader 4.0 leader is fair, and that is what I was talking about: inclusion, cultural practices. It has to apply to everybody. How do we make sure that we are respectful, that we give everybody the same opportunities, that there is no concept of generation as part of my team? How do we divide the jobs among our work team, and we do it in a fair manner? So the most important thing, and something that I've been talking about with different leaders, is we as leaders, we have to leave a legacy. And when we're talking about a legacy, that means, what do we want? We want people that are there with us today, we want them to stay there a lot longer after we leave, or that they can take different roads after they leave our organization, and they should remember us. A few years ago, I interviewed 138 CEOs. They were from organizations like CEO, Google, or Johnson and Johnson, and I asked that question: what's the legacy you want to leave behind you for the people that you lead today? And let me share with you the summary of what they wanted to leave when they left. Not one of them of these leaders that I talked to me about just financial growth. They did not talk to me about improvement in a production unit. Nobody talked to me about operational issues. 138 leaders of the biggest places of work in Latin America, they talked to me about the impact they wanted to have on people. How we see that they really want to leave something with everybody in our teams. How are we going to achieve a transformational change, give more meaning to what our people are doing so that they connect with their own best versions of themselves, professionally and as a person? That is what big leaders do. This is what 4.0 leaders do. And this process goes hand in hand with the re engineering process. It's a cultural transformation process that organizations have to go through. So they're based on trust, and where you have an emotional commitment to the job and a true will to stay.
Entonces, ¿qué? ¿Cómo? So then, how do we do this? To the essential thing to survive culturally at such a critical moment, but a moment that's also so special for each organization, for all people who live on this planet, is resiliency. We need to be able to think in a way like it's something that was assembled with Legos, so that we can assemble it in a way that we can face approach problems in a different way to help the members of our team to find the best solutions. So we need resiliency, we need technology for all those things that I show you: communication, leadership, knowledge, skill development, using technology to work along those lines. Communicating with our people, connect to our people, make sure that there is that engagement. Let's use technology. So always communicate. Communication is basic so that we can survive and mainly consolidate from the cultural standpoint. Secure the three C's in Spanish: consistency, congruence, competence. What we're telling you as leaders, what we do as a person. It's doesn't it's not worth having video conferences with your people or have meetings and telling them, well, we need to tell them we're incorporating the best measures, safety measures, security measures, so you and your family are protected. And then when we're saying online, well, we're all going to die. No, we need to be consistent with what we're telling everybody at the organization level and the way we're acting as people. We need to strengthen leadership. There's the model 70, 20, 10. 10% knowledge, best practices that can be conveyed through spaces like this one. This is what we've learned. This is a theory. This is the basis. 20%, that's something we develop through learning, through self learning. We research, we read, we seek, and the 70% is achieved on the day to day life. It's not worth it for me to say just, well, we have to be resilient, we have to use the technology, we have to communicate. So 70% is taking that into practice. So you need that 70% so that that transformation takes root. And it's important not to be afraid to be afraid. Afraid is a very human emotion, and it's not even human. It's an animal emotion. Our nature free if being afraid allows us to respond. It's a biological response so that we don't get eaten by a predator. If I was attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, I had two options. And I can run or try to fight. And in that case, of course, the only option was to run and try to save your life. But that's the same biological response we have today, and that's what allows us to act. Uh, it's not don't be afraid, but uh, don't fear those situations. Don't fear facing those situations, and let's learn to adapt to uncertainty. Those variables in my formula that I'm not going to be able to control. The only thing we can be sure of today, November 11th, we can only be sure that we don't know what's going to happen by January the 11th. So we're going to live with that uncertainty. That's going to be a constant, and we need to learn to adapt to that and be able to be a leader to teams that also need to adapt to this uncertainty. In summary, make it simple. You are in an incredible position now to continue changing the world. And there's no better way to tell about that importance we have as human beings. Nothing more important than that interconnection than we have to make this a beautiful experience. Enjoy it.
Did you ever stop to think that you can't leave for your job in the morning without being dependent on most of the world? Yes, as nations and individuals, we are interdependent.
Before we are billions of people, or thousands of cultures, or hundreds of nations, we are one interdependent human race, living in transformational times, an age not only of progress, but paradox, an age of connection and division, of extraordinary opportunity and existential threat, of unprecedented abundance and widening inequality. us, it is the best of times. For some of us, the worst. For all of us, it is time to come together. Today we have the tools to tip the scales, level the playing fields, and bring everyone into the game. If we act as one, we will rise as one. Before we are storytellers, change makers, innovators, thinkers, and doers, we are one, with one purpose and one question to ask ourselves. Are we all in? Because we are all in this together.
We all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. That whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly.
No encontré un mejor mensaje que esta iniciativa tan
I
hermosa.
didn't find a better message than this one, Martin Luther King, and this global initiative to remind us of that great value of all being human beings, all being interconnected. We all need to be engaged in this from our role, from our function, from what we do. We need to transcend, to make it more transcendent, to make it more than just a simple job, to have a positive impact on the world, and to leave a legacy, not just having come through it, but having transformed positively someone's life, or like in your case, transforming the lives of so many through food. It was a real honor for me to join you in this conversation. And Anna, if you're okay, we can start with the questions.
¡Qué alegría! Yo
It's
espero que todas las
great,
personas que están
wonderful.
conectadas
I hope that
se sientan
everybody
como yo lo
who
estoy
is
el día
connected
de
is
hoy,
feeling as happy as I am. Beatriz, thank you.
porque
Thank you
siento que
because
hemos hecho un trabajo
uh,
complejo,
including as leaders, we have a very complex job. I want to thank everybody who answered the surveys, the survey about the emotions. It was very powerful because these are the leaders of organizations, and the ones who are in positions of leadership were also afraid. We're also sad. It's never been said that leaders cannot feel that. On the opposite, if it starts with us, we will be able to accompany our work team so that they allow themselves to feel that. So, Beatriz, thank you very much for all this love, all this inspiration. You have 5 questions. Well, there are several more here. First question at the beginning. So within that desire to remain, the permanence, you said that 50% is linked to the leader. Uh, has it been studied how much the direct boss influences and how much the direction, the purpose? Well, most of that it's there's three big spheres besides compensation, the working environment, microclimate, and the leader. There's three levels of trust. How much do I trust my work team? How do I know that if I fail, if I'm on one of the legs of the table, if I fail, the other leg's going to be able to support the weight of that table? Then there is the next sphere is the leader. And when we talk about the leader, we're talking about the direct leader because we have to differentiate between what's the boss and what's the leader. Boss is old school, old generation. Leader is what we want today. Leaders who help with the processes. So it's the level of trust that I have in my leader. And the third level of trust relates to the organization. And when we talk about the organization, uh, what falls within that is the purpose of the organization. In Latin America, let's say Ana Catalina, that person that's at the top to be a leader and to make sure that that Latin American network works. That's at the organization level. But when we talk about the direct boss, your direct leader, that's the person you report to. So when we talk about the desire to stay, to remain, Yeah, the leader has to be an example of that purpose of the organization, the value of the organization, and the way the organization acts and performs. So, undoubtedly, the one who has the largest weight on your desire, your decision to remain, is not the boss, is your direct leader. Okay, Beatriz, there's another question. I think it's going to be useful for everybody. Do you have any recommendation to encourage the people on the team who are discouraged a little bit, maybe uh, because of what they do, but they don't want to leave? So let's say, they remain with the organization, they continue doing their job because they have to do it, but they're not motivated, they're not inspired. Is there any recommendation? I know there's no formula, but well, there's something that's really interesting. I always use this example when they ask me about this point. Uh, I can say that, the best uh, snack in this world is pancake and coffee, or so what's the difference? Is or It's a pastry, that's a chocolate, is it filled or not, the type of coffee, decaffeinated, almond milk or cold. So the type of pastry, the type of coffee, that's it's up to the organization, has to be connected to the culture of the organization. So what's going on? And this is the worst fear of the leaders in human resources, is that we're having those psychologically motivated resignation and quitting. So I have to, I'm remaining, I'm staying, but I don't want to. So psychologically, I'm quitting, uh, but I stay. But I work, I fulfill my function, but don't ask me to wear that shirt to have it in my veins. So how are you handling communications today? How do we humanize that relationship between leaders and work teams and amongst work teams? So you have to seek a dynamic, and really, Ana Catalina, I try to step in the shoes of what it means to work in an organization like yours. First of all, I'm uh, really jealous because you're doing something to try to make a better world. So I'm fascinated by that. But it's very complex. It's very difficult to be in the shoes of leaders of an organization like this one. Seek spaces where you connect with something beyond the job. For example, now, with the December holidays, try to have those talks. What are you going to do at the end of the year in Latin America? So don't laugh about this, but we have this custom of going out at midnight on December 31st. So that would mean we would travel the following year, or we eat 12 grapes when the clock strikes midnight. So try to find that communication, the personal communication. In my personal experience, for example, we started doing remote work on March 13th. The day that we reached the 200 days of working outside the office, we had a meeting on uh, and we tried to see what we had learned from those first 200 days, because we didn't know if it was going to take another 200 days. So as a leader, it was very interesting. I had not thought about that. I had not thought of that as a learning experience. And that allowed for a space where, well, we're not going to talk about what I have to do or what time I'm going to do this, but just a space that allow us to connect people with their team. Remember that you can modify that impact, that 20% weight that compensation has. I doubt it. No organization is in a position to modify compensation at this point. But as leaders, you can do that, connecting with the people, knowing how each one of them is doing, caring, and seeing how we can take better care of ourselves and improve our lives. So, and we need to find those spaces, those sounding boards where we step away from the concerns for the weight that we have on our shoulders as organization. So connect as people. Thank you, Beatriz. That reminds me of something. I had a mentor Well, I have many mentors. I love having mentors. I was asked this morning if I have mentors, and I say yes. I have many mentors that accompany me in this daily exercise of building, growing myself. And one of those mentors was saying, Anna, uh, managing human talent should take you about 30% of your time or more, because that's the reason you exist. Your reason is not to manage projects. Your job is to manage your team so they carry out the projects. And in relation to that, that issue of mentorship, what's the role of a mentor in the development of leaders? It's huge. There's a conference that we had with the Dominican Republic and Central America a little short time ago, which was, leaders also cry. Why? Because we're suffering. We have that anguish. We have the burden of fulfilling our objectives, and we have that need to get rid of so many of those things that are burdening of us. And that has to do with what comes in our business card. You have a higher level organization. You manage people now. We have to maintain the energy, the motivation, the positive attitude in our people. But we're still human beings. So, and as I was saying, what I mentioned in the end, don't be afraid to be afraid. And mentors sometimes allow us to look at ourselves, and what they can do is that they paraphrase. They say it's like they're reading the time in your watch. They're looking at your watch and saying, "This is the time." So it's like a mentor allows for you to see yourself in the mirror, to clarify questions that we have. Leaders have doubts too. The thing is, we have a much smaller margin of error when we make decisions. We weigh very carefully the responsibility. What's going to happen if I make a mistake? If it doesn't turn out well? And the mentor allows us, when you're trying to make that decision, or when you're executing some action, you're going to be more at ease. We're going to feel more sure of yourself and the risks you're taking, because as leaders, we can make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. So the mentor helps for you to think. You think together where the risks are and how to manage your own fears, your own uncertainties and anguish as a leader. So, Beatriz, thank you. We have 5 minutes. We have four questions.
How do we integrate the different generations into one team so that you of each generation without creating competition, just complementary skills? That is a very complex question. As individuals, everybody is incredibly valuable. I met somebody who's 87 today, and the way he thinks is more millennial than somebody who's 30. So, somebody with a very disruptive way of thinking. So, what we need to do is look at everybody's profile. If you have multiple options in the market so that you can really go in depth and see what the strengths are for every person. So let's say those of us are, a certain age, and we can identify where every person's strength is located. And the thing is, we need to be fair. We do not have to play favorites with anybody in the team. So, among this concept of what justice and fairness is, we need to see who has more analysis capacity, who, and women are very good at this. In Spanish, we have a saying that says that you have to find the fifth leg to the cat. I mean, we look at something very simple, but we know to see the complexity in it. And when we want to develop a work team, we have to find, skills, things that are going to help you in a crisis that nobody else saw before. So we need to identify where the strengths are for the teams, and then you have to find, the complement. And you need to find somebody that's really analytical with somebody who's really practical, somebody who's capable of finding different solutions, and you have to find, teams where you have, 2 plus 2 is 3, and you have to find many ways for them to work together. Nowadays the virtual world is really allowing us to do that. Do not be afraid of the virtual world, and everybody has to contribute and use the best possible the strength that everybody has. And one last question. Everything that I wanted to look about appreciation, sometimes the organizations do not have the best compensation plans for, I imagine that people are talking about salaries. What new solutions do you propose so that we can show appreciation beyond the letter or a round of applause? Oh, I love the this topic, appreciation. The first thing is, I know that we're going to have several questions we're not going to be able to get to today. I promise you. Copy the questions for me, send them to me. I will reply by email, and we're going to make sure that everybody gets the answer to their question. In terms of appreciation, there are different ways of recognizing skills and rewarding people. Obviously, compensation is the best way to reward people for their skills. But there is a wonderful concept that it's sort of a gift, a detail. When somebody really does something that goes beyond their scope of duty, when you want to recognize their behavior, their skills, or their attitudes that go beyond of what we expect normally to see. What is the first thing that I propose? Um, Work to see what are the pillars of our recognition or appreciation program. And we need to know what we appreciate and what are the skills that we want to reward. When when you see somebody that really goes beyond the expectations, and we want to take advantage of the moment, and we want to celebrate right then and there, and we want to make it publicly. People need to know that we are rewarding something, that we're rewarding somebody for something they did. We can send an card, or a bag of chocolate. How expensive is that? We can leave a note on somebody's desk and say to somebody, we want to thank you so much for what you did, and always explain why. When you took care of the truck that had to deliver that load, and even though we were going through a construction area, you arrived there and you did your job, but explain what you're rewarding and then give them some chocolate. That is better, that level of recognition. And this is sort of biology. You reinforce a behavior, and that's behavioral theory. So if you reinforce the behavior is going to become a habit, and that's what you want to do. So you recognize a conduct or a behavior, and you want to make sure that it becomes a habit. So you recognize them, you appreciate it, and that leads to higher level of commitment. And that higher level of commitment increases productivity, increases efficacy, and more efficacy, productivity for those of us that want to generate profit. That translates in a better business plan. So you have to recognize the behavior. Do not wait more than 24, 48 hours, 72 hours. Explain why you're giving this reward recognition, and make sure that it is done in public. You always say you scold people in private, but you appreciate them in public. Okay, thank you, thank you. I have to interrupt you. I have to ask you this last question. I'm sorry, they're going to kill me if I don't do it. And this is with love for everybody that sent this question to us, because they are reflecting. It's a reflection, and it's interesting. How, as coworkers, how do we, for the workers, how do we motivate our leaders, and how we make sure that our leaders' impact is positive? Um, Okay, that is a question. Not only you have that question, we have a very good, team sometimes. But oh gosh, if we could burn our leader at the stake, we would do it because he's so bad. That happens. So talking about one of our mentors, one mentor always he told me that in life you have to make decisions, you have to adapt. So we can adapt to the fact that this is the way it is. Our leader is like it, he is what he is. But also there's a cultural practice that there's things that we can do from our own position of power. What that means is we can build or we can create a micro culture. The organizational culture is like a big umbrella that covers everybody. In this case, the food banks. It covers the entire organization. What happens, for instance, in one region, in a country, or in a team, then you have this micro culture. So you want to start modeling. And when we're talking about modeling, we're talking about being an example. We can start showing by example. I don't know how you're going to translate this. We have to like the chicken with the eggs. You have to announce what you're doing. You have to tell people what you're doing. You have to advertise your results. Find a space where the leader is and help the leader to transform their own leadership style. Share what you've done, share your results, and the leaders, every human being has to behave using two different connections. One is rational and the other one is emotional. We're all, beings that use both spheres. There are some people that are mostly rational and not so emotional, and some people like me are more emotional than rational. So depending on how uh, the leader is the person that you want to model behavior for. If the person is more rational, the way that you're going to present, and this is a tip, and I hope your leader is not here listening to me because then he's going to know what you're doing. If your leader is rational, you show them hard data. You say, this is what I did. This is the direct impact. These are the different levels of operations that it impacted. If, on the other hand, your leader is more emotional, okay, I took this initiative. I was able to get people to connect and connect at this level. And this also allowed us to obtain these other results. So the most important thing is you do not want to make the other person see that your model is the best. We are just role models. If he wants to copy us or not, that is his problem or her problem. From our own perspective, we need to transform our own microculture, our own workspace, and we need to find a way to tell what our work is and what we've done. And some other people are going to say, hey, I like what you said and how you're doing this. And do you have 5, 10 minutes so that you can tell me a little bit more about what you're doing and see if I can implement this elsewhere? Because nobody wants to show their weaknesses in public, and even less at this level. Nobody wants to look like a bad leader. Nobody wants to show their weak points. So that is the other question about mentors. Become mentors to each other. Be confident enough. You can find a solution one on one. You can talk to somebody. You can look at what's going on in your market or your space. I don't know if I answered the question. Yes, yes. I'm in love with you. That's wonderful. So I have no words to thank you. We talk about logistics and social organizations and food organizations, but but this is great. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for this time, this space. Thank you very much for being part of this FBLI, virtual FBLI. And I want to thank our sponsors, General Mills, HEB, Bramwell's Cargill, DNA Piper, Lala Foundation, and Ingredient. Thank you. Thanks to them, these meetings are even possible. And I want to tell you that you're going to get an email later on with a survey and questions about how you felt and what you think we need to change. That's to help us improve. You can share the recording with everybody. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you so much for making sense of everything we do. Take care.